And greetings. Happy Friday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with McIntire and Todd Erzen. Going to be joined by our good friend Jordan Schachtel for the Deace Group here in just a moment. I am Steve Deace. We are brought to you by our new partners over at Moxie Pest Services. If you have struggled to find a pest service that is reliable and trustworthy, and my son-in-law has worked in pest control when he's not soldiering, and I've heard some horror stories from him. All right. So this is definitely why you want to sign up with Moxie. They care about you as a customer, the community, and they care about their team members. They care about them enough, by the way, that they do daily training, retraining, and follow-up with their staff to make sure you're not just getting the most courteous staff that they can provide, but also the best informed about the best practices as well. That's why their safety standards are sky high. All right. And they're committed to showing up on time, doing the job right, and earning your trust. That's why they've been a trusted name in home services for over 25 years. All right, so right now, to celebrate those 25 years in business, you can get your first pest control service from Moxie for just $25. You can't beat that. $25, way lower than what typically costs in the market right now, just to see if they keep their word or not, right? Visit Moxie, M-O-X-I-E, moxieservices.com/Steve. Use the promo code Steve to get the good deal here on your initial first pest control service for just $25. You need the promo code Steve at Moxie, M-O-X-I-E, moxieservices.com/Steve for the $25 offer with the promo code Steve. All right, coming up next hour on the show here, it'll be your turn with some Feedback Friday. But first, it is time for the Deace Group. Hello to Jordan, and your weekly look at the week that was begins, as it always does, with issue 1. Bleep. Lord Nefarious says.
You know, I remember, Dan, at one point being in Tehran years ago, and they're chanting death to America all around me, even as I say, oh, I'm an American reporting for CNN, and they were happy to speak to me. So that those two sort of jarring realities of the chant and yet the friendliness.
This timeline of Iran being a few weeks away from a nuclear bomb is in direct contradiction to CNN's reporting. According to U.S. intelligence assessments, Iran is 3 years away from being able to produce a nuclear weapon if they wanted to. So the facts on Iran getting a nuclear weapon do not bear out the claim at the heart of what has put the world on the verge of world war. It only set back the Iranian nuclear program by months. We got to call it like it is. It's a big deal.
If anything, this attack and what Trump has done is only going to unite our adversaries like North Korea, Russia, the PRC to come to help Iran. And if you were Iranian leadership, what this taught you was they better get nuclear weapons very quickly.
Let me tell you, just dropping those few bombs in one day, that was the beginning of what is going to be a very long bill for us as they talk about being efficient. There was nothing efficient.
I'm a black man in America. The reason why heart disease...
I'm white, I can't comment
Listen to what I'm saying. The reason why heart disease and cancer and obesity and diabetes are bigger in the black community is because of the stress we carry from having to deal with being called the N-word.
Long before there was a vaccine, people were dying at higher rates in rural areas than any other county. And that's because they didn't have the same resources. They didn't have testing. They didn't have remdesivir. Everything that you had in the cities, they didn't have in rural areas. And I went rural community by rural community, and then you wonder why they used ivermectin, because there wasn't a doctor there. There was only a vet.
I will lay all responsibility for every death from a vaccine-preventable illness at your feet.
They disagree with you. They do. And I disagree with them. And that's fine. That's what makes America great, right, Pam Ward? I should rephrase that. Yes.
You should have threw a boy in the mix.
I would. I'm so glad I didn't have a boy.
Yeah. Because he would have been a Barack Obama.
You're a proud Democratic socialist. Do you think that is a platform that would work for other candidates running in other parts of the country?
Absolutely.
There it is. I have to just say, I think we brought this up a few days ago. A lot of men would much rather get text from their friends with a live stream of their wife cucking them in public. That would be preferable to hearing their wife say in public, I didn't want to have a son because he'd be like my husband. What a just absolutely despicable, disgusting thing to say. Beyond disrespectful. I mean, it's not disrespectful doesn't do it justice. It's beyond that. Let's get to the first question here. Jordan, you get the first crack at it as the guest. What was the most wretched hive of scum and villainy you just witnessed, and why?
It was like a 5-year PTSD session all at once. So I'll just take all of it.
I know.
We did, just like you had that before and after video of the CNN anchor, we needed a before and after of Jordan. Before the show started and then after he was forced to witness that last 4 to 5 minutes, indeed.
And we do this every day.
We do it every day. We do it every day. But there had to be at least, let me rephrase the question, Jordan. What was the tap out moment? What was the moment where you're just like, your senses just were like, I'm out. I'm overloaded. I can't take any more. What was that?
Yeah, it's like going back to the COVID times and realizing all of the unaccountability that still exists. I think the word remdesivir was the one that made me internally explode, probably.
Yes, the cancer drug that failed, that was given a black box warning, but somehow it was going to work against COVID, but it doesn't work. And the first study that was ever done on it in real time was done here at the University of Iowa. And what it found is that it doesn't help against COVID, but it does cause kidney failure. So there's that. Todd.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I started because, she's still on boards. She's still respected. This is my point. I get there were wins. There's more people who understand things now than they did 5 years ago. But broadly speaking, and on the right as well, there's all kinds of people who think the jab saved a bunch of people, even if there were more repercussions in terms of injuries. I mean, and it's because there still have been no consequences. There has to be severe consequences for people like this who this brazenly lie to you. And I'm just gonna the sister. It came right after that. I don't know if it's coincidence or not, but just the Rebecca Lobo, who's just apparently not allowed to say it. That's what makes America great. Again,
the producer comes in here and tells you she has to apologize for that.
So there's lies just as big going on at ESPN, which is the place of the magical tree of too much money that must make college football change and thus all of college sport. I mean, the lies that people believe are so deep that nobody will take on because they have things that they have to do in comfort land. And this is just another example. Those are the same things. Debbie Birx's lies and ESPN's lies are the same. And most of you have no plans to do anything about them because you've got your own private Idaho to protect.
Aaron?
I just love the oversimplification, and that's putting it nicely, of Debbie Birx. All those people out in the flyover states, they didn't have doctors because they're basically like animals. So they had to go to the animal doctor to get their animal medicine. This is a big black eye for... Oh, my gosh. Just... That woman.
This is what happens when people who deserve tribunals and execution face neither.
But Aaron,
that's what happens. Yes. I have no else. There's no other explanation required. This is literally what would have happened if after World War II, for example, we just, other than the German science apparatus that was obliterated within the war theater, if there were no follow-up trials, no follow-up tribunals, and we just let that integrate right back into the Gen Pop as the culture was rebuilding after that, what would have it sounded like? What would it look like? It would have looked and sounded like what Debbie Birx sounds like. That's what it would have looked like.
Which is why, Aaron, the way you just painted that, it was that's perfect. But in response to that level of contempt, where are the torches and pitchforks? Because isn't that the right answer?
Yep.
They're not there. That's my point. You're absolutely right, Aaron. Where's the disgust? Where is over my dead body? It's not coming. We're too comfortable.
Let's go to, so that was that was just an aside comment. Jamaal Bowman Can we address this?
Oh, yes, we have to.
That's
Thank
just
you. Yes.
mentally ill. It just is.
The only argument is that demonic oppression or possession. Which one is it?
Yeah, it's just Actually, that's more appropriate. That should be laughed off and or taken to a padded room.
Instead, it got elected to Congress.
Correct.
He's the guy who pulled the fire alarm.
He's the guy that pulled the fire alarm. Yeah, that got elected to Congress.
Same thing.
The idea that by the way, who's predominantly using the N-bomb in our culture today? By the way, where are you more likely to hear that than literally any other corridor of American existence? Their own subculture.
Yeah.
So, again, why is that anybody else's fault?
Nobody's serious about anything.
No, nobody's. I could get serious about quite a few things. Got to be honest.
I'm just waiting for Jordan to walk.
And
off
a lot
the
of
show at
times,
this point.
they include like stockades and gallows. I can get after fair trials, of course.
Yes.
After fair trials, of course. I'm not a barbarian, but I could get serious about some things. Okay. In fact, some of people, I actually scare myself how eager I think I would be to push the button on some of these kind of things. It kind of frightens me, actually. Like maybe that's not healthy either, because I'm like very eager.
Hit me.
I mean, I'm as eager to hit the button on some of these things as Lindsey Graham is to explore the bowels of Iran for enriched uranium. Okay. Let's get to the exit question. On a scale of 1 to 10.
Steve's ready to go Operation Midnight Hammer.
I was wondering where that sentence about Lindsey Graham was going once we reached bowels.
Let me show you my Midnight Hammer.
On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the odds our beloved friend and sister Jill Savage has to worry about being sexually harassed by Lindsey Graham, and 10 being the odds that Jordan here probably does. Watch your 6, Jordan. Watch your 6. Rank this week's level of total depravity, Aaron.
10.
Todd.
10.
Jordan, where you at?
We're at 10.
You're at 10? All right. Speaking of which, real quick, I have to say, speaking of Lindsey Graham, I remain, as of this morning, one of the best-selling LGBTQ FU authors in America with Richie Meets the Rainbow. So I want to thank you guys very much for that. We are down to the last few hundred copies that are going to get sent out this weekend. Thank you for your patience. I'm getting a ton of notes from people that are reading the book to their kids. And it's funny, I'm getting a lot of notes from parents who are like, their kids are like incensed at first, thinking that mom and dad have like betrayed their principles. And then they read in the book and they love the fact that the whole thing is a troll. Okay, so I love those notes too. All right, so if you could leave us a 5-star review at Amazon, try to defeat the algorithm that hates us, that didn't even want to list the book. And if you want to get your copy, they're available there now. Richie, Richie Meets the Rainbow, a heartwarming tale of childhood enlightenment. Listen, you know what? While we have Jordan here for a second, indulge me for just a second here. All right, I mean, it's really the endorsements that make a book. Right. So, I mean, obviously, I'm biased here as the author. Right. So we went out and we sent the manuscript out, got some expert opinions. Here's one. It's important that every new generation knows the true origins of pride. And this book is a pithy introduction to the movement Remaking America. I mean, that's from none other than Hal Kinsey over at the Parental Education Development Organization. You guys may know it as PEDO. Then we talked to Dr. Gene Poole. And Gene gave it a hearty recommendation. He said, just when you think you've already seen the best and most inclusive pride book for kids, along comes this masterpiece. Thank you, Gene. That's high praise coming from you. And of course, you guys know Gene's organization, the Integrative Department of Independently Organized Therapists. And then this book here is wisdom. Only someone with keen insight would open it and be able to calculate how much so. Let that someone be you. And that's from Lou Cipher, who's at the Societal Action Team Against Narrow-Mindedness. I never thought that Lou Cipher and I would, find something we agree on. But again, Pride Month is bringing people together, and so is this book. So if you want to get your copy, it's available on Amazon right now. Richie Meets the Rainbow, Richie. Richie Meets the Rainbow. It is, after all, a heartwarming tale of childhood enlightenment. Let's get to issue 2, the conflict and the aftermath.
An operation 15 years in the making went off without a hitch last Saturday evening as Operation Midnight Hammer obliterated Iran's nuclear facilities, setting their nuclear ambitions back several years. Fewer than 48 hours later, a ceasefire between Israel and Iran was called and has held so far. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, explained how the United States prepared for its daring attack utilizing B-2 bombers who flew nonstop on a route nearly the entire circumference of the globe.
In 2009, a Defense Threat Reduction Agency officer was brought into a vault at an undisclosed location and briefed on something going on in Iran. For security purposes, I'm not going to share his name. He was shown some photos and some highly classified intelligence of what looked like a major construction project in the mountains of Iran. He was tasked to study this facility, work with the intelligence community to understand it, and he was soon joined by an additional teammate. For more than 15 years, this officer and his teammate lived and breathed this single target, Fordow, a critical element of Iran's covert nuclear weapons program. He studied the geology. He watched the Iranians dig it out. He watched the construction, the weather, the discard material, the geology, the construction materials, where the materials came from. He looked at the vent shaft, the exhaust shaft, the electrical systems, the environmental control systems, every nook, every crater, every piece of equipment going in and every piece of equipment going out. They literally dreamed about this target at night when they slept. They thought about it driving back and forth to work, and they knew from the very first days what this was for. You do not build a multi-layered underground bunker complex with centrifuges and other equipment in a mountain for any peaceful purpose. They weren't able to discuss this with their family, their wives, their kids, their friends, but they just kept grinding it out. And along the way, they realized we did not have a weapon that could adequately strike and kill this target. So they began a journey to work with industry and other tacticians to develop the GBU-57. They tested it over and over again, tried different options, tried more after that. They accomplished hundreds of test shots and dropped many full-scale weapons against extremely realistic targets for a single purpose: kill this target at the time and place of our nation's choosing. And then, on a day in June of 2025, more than 15 years after they started their life's work, the phone rang and the President of the United States ordered the B-2 force that you've supported to go strike and kill this target.
So obviously, Jordan, we have been talking about this all week on various fronts. So we want to open this topic up with you because you're going to give our audience a fresh perspective in yours. What's your biggest takeaway from both the conflict itself, but then the ongoing aftermath?
Yeah, my biggest takeaway that probably hasn't been discussed as much is that there's a big disconnect between reality and what we're seeing online, and that reality is always much more important than, the chatter on X and all of the social media channels. What we witnessed was, in my view, an incredible victory by the IDF, partnered with the United States Air Force, and they dropped the big bombs on Fordow and some other facilities. But it showed the technical and qualitative excellence that the Israeli military possesses vis-a-vis Iran. I mean, they took out all of their air defenses within minutes. And then, the entirety of this 12-day war, Israel had completely open airspace. And I'm sure you guys have been following this issue for quite some time. The biggest issue was always like, how is Israel going to get there and drop the bombs? They have all these Russian, all these Chinese defense systems. And the problem was solved instantaneously. And in addition to that, Israel suffered 0 military casualties. So, there's all these crazy people online affiliated with, the watermelon people, the Islamists, the socialists, and also this, whatever you want to call them, woke right kind of Groyper or whatever. And the supreme leader of Iran's on X insisting that, Iran, we crushed the Zionists. It's like, no, that's not really what happened here. What happened is that Israel and the United States set Iran's nuclear program back indefinitely, utterly dismantled their command and control infrastructure. Iran has no air force. They have no air defenses. Israel can strike at will. And they were also proven proving that, the best defense, sometimes a great offense, because they were aggressively taking out these launcher sites with these ballistic missiles. It was just a showcase of excellence, particularly by the IDF. The reality on the ground, there's no question that, in my view, that they accomplished their goal, and they also, set an incredible deterrence standard too. But I think just, job well done with both Israel and the United States. And, the props goes to the president, of course, for having the courage to, drop the big bombs, despite many people, even in his own coalition, very influential people, which is strange because if you look at the polls thereafter, it's probably the most, supported action of his entire presidency so far. I think it was like 94% of Trump voters said they approved of the strike. So I'm not sure what, Tucker Carlson and, some of people that I've even collaborated before with, like Charlie Kirk and Jack Posobiec, and list goes on and on. I'm not sure where that was all coming from, where they were saying that this is going to split the base. My good friends at at Heritage, at the Federalist, they also said this. And I think that it's important when people get things so wrong that they take accountability for it. So I'd like to see that in the coming days, that some of these people that were so worried, I think somewhat rightfully, so some people were so worried about, is this going to be another Iraq? Or is there going to be a giant World War III and thousands of American troops are going to die? Like, none of those narratives really came to fruition whatsoever. So I think it's worth, some of those big names addressing that. And I think that, but again, Israel and the United States did an amazing job, and Trump's voters loved it.
Two follow-up questions for you, and then Todd and I will let you guys respond to the answers that Jordan gave, because again, we've dissected all this ourselves all week. When I've kind of compared this, the missions were not similar. Reagan actually put Marine boots on the ground in Grenada. It was kind of the modern birth of of what became known as Delta Force. But in terms of atmospheric equivalency, I do think they're similar. Coming out of Vietnam and the failure there, and then the amount of limp-wristedness we had shown with SALTs 1 and 2 in the face of the Soviets, and we're being subjected to all the Soviet propaganda. And the American people were very conditioned as Reagan took office to think that there was no ability to project American strength that was not going to lead to thermonuclear war. There was nothing between Vietnam, rehash, and doomsday. And I think with Grenada, Reagan demonstrated that America could project strength in the world again, to even defend its own theater, that didn't cause the sorts of domino theories and spillover effects of think tanks and people's, existential fears. I think Trump is inheriting a military right now coming out of being infiltrated by wokeness, but also a political atmosphere of it's either always 1941 or we called them Team Levin and Team Tucker on our show. All right. So for Team Levin, it's always 1941 and it's always 1981. Everything is measured by those, everything's the Nazis and everything's the Soviet Union. OK. And then for Team Tucker, it's always Iraq. It's always Iraq. OK. And the American people, I think, are kind of stuck in these two places as well. And I think what Trump showed is there is a vast chasm of American strength and precision and devastating impact and leadership between those two potholes, similar to what Reagan did with Grenada. Do you think that is a situational equivalency there for his presidency?
That's a good way to put it. Though I do think that there are some alarming issues on some segments of the right with catering to Islamist governments in the Gulf and kind of, becoming engrossed with their talking points to the point where they start repeating them, maybe unknowingly, maybe purposefully. But I think that there's some major issues. And, I don't agree with the hyper-interventionists at all either. I mean, I've been criticizing them for a decade or more. But I'm seeing a lot of narratives that seem to be coming, that seem to be coming from foreign governments that are really infiltrating the right. And it's deeply disturbing, for all the people that say, Israel does this, Israel does that. There's a lot of other stuff going on. And these people, these governments want to influence our politics and they have a lot of money. And I'm seeing stuff that they're saying is being repeated by people with big platforms. And it's it's irresponsible, and especially like, if they don't have the knowledge, don't defer to a foreign regime or the foreign agents of a foreign regime. It's never going to end up too well, and these people are going to end up embarrassing themselves with all the hysterics. I mean, like, I think that most of the smart people on Iran that have been, on the right side of this for quite some time have been trying to tell the world that, Iran without a nuclear weapon is a paper tiger. Like, they do not want to go toe to toe with the United States, and they're seeking an offer. They'll seek an offer immediately, and that's basically what happened. Is they fired those missiles into the sky in Qatar. They got shot down, and it was a wrap. But there was a way to avoid this type of analysis, and it was so cluttered. I think, my background's in international relations, so I'm familiar with what foreign propaganda looks like, especially coming out of Iran, Russia, Qatar, and it was like a mirror image, and it was very bizarre. And I think that it's important for people to kind of do like a retrospective analysis on what exactly happened there, because it was so off base. I think with some people on the right, Tucker particularly is entirely unhinged. I think that Ted Cruz was right to say that he's become entirely obsessed with Israel. He talks about Israel in every single one of his shows, despite, his initial claim being that, we have a giant fentanyl problem when he started the Tucker Carlson X show, and that we're supposed to just talk about the border and domestic issues. But I think today he's had Marjorie Taylor Greene on to talk about Israel and to talk about Jewish influence or whatever. So it's become an obsessive topic for so many of these people. And I think what they find is that there's a separation between, the engagement on X. You have these like Pakistani, Chinese bot farms that are, giving them all this engagement. So they keep talking about this. But then, Trump strikes Iran. 94% of MAGA voters say we love it. And they still, want to talk about how awful Israel is and what Israel's doing to Palestinians, or what Israel's doing here, if Israel controls our government. It's just like this obsessive loop. And I think that in the conversation about what to do about Iran and Israel, of course, are fierce adversaries. And that kind of got like, that analysis got like sucked into, the false analysis got sucked into, what they were considering, what they, were proposing, what the president should be doing, what should not be doing. And unfortunately, it's captured so much of social media because audience capture is such a giant threat, and people just kind of go where the clicks are. And for whatever reason, online, there's an overwhelming supply of clicks, for the Candace Owens of the world, et cetera, when they just talk about the Jews, talk about Israel all day. And I think, unfortunately, some other big time figures on the right have picked up on this like toxic clickbait atmosphere. So it totally corrupted a lot of people's views about Iran. And I hope that, what happened over the last couple of weeks will help to reset us kind of back to reality about this issue.
All right. We're up against the clock, guys, so I'm just going to go right to the exit question, okay? If the odds Trump will be forced to strike Iran again before he leaves office were a Van Halen song, which Van Halen song would it be? A, Finish What You Started. B, I'll Wait. C, Right Now. D, Why Can't This Be Love? Aaron.
What is I think B. What was B?
I'll Wait.
I'll Wait.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen.
You don't?
Yeah.
Todd?
I interpreted I'll Wait differently. Like, I need to see for a month how Iran handles this thing. That's my answer to I'll Wait, and I'll go with it.
Jordan, where are you at? Which Van Halen song?
I agree.
I'll Wait? You guys are all I'll Wait, yes. But for different reasons. Okay. What I was going to ask Jordan, I don't have time now. It'll be a separate conversation. Right. One thing we didn't discuss is what's the law of unintended consequences of leaving a weak, diminished, and embarrassed Iranian regime in place.
That's why I'm waiting. I don't know.
Right? Are they the wounded animal who's cornered, and so they'll find even more desperate attempts to commit acts of evils and atrocities beyond even what we've seen for the last 5 decades? Or is there somebody over there that has some self-awareness and saw the lack of their partners who came to their aid and says, we need to have a little more self-awareness? I have no idea what the answer to that question is. I don't know. All right, we'll come back. Is America's greatest city gone? We'll discuss next. right, folks, you're going to recognize the name because we've told you about them before. And we are thrilled that our friends over at Taiga Coolers are back. They're the real deal, 100% American-made, built for people who still believe in self-reliance, craftsmanship, good old-fashioned freedom. So if you've been with us for a while, you know we don't just endorse anything around here. In fact, I've actually said no to lots of endorsements over the years. So we don't just take everybody's money. It's got to actually be a good product. And Taiga isn't just good, they're excellent. Tough, dependable, ready for anything, whether you're ranching, fishing, tailgating. That's right, it's going to be tailgate season before you know it, Todd Erzen. I know you're excited. Just trying to survive a Midwest summer with your dignity intact. But here's what really makes them special. It's not just that they're sturdy, dependable. They're also customizable. You can put a family crest on there, color your favorite team colors, provided it doesn't violate a copyright. Your business logo on there. Maybe you're going to go follow your son around for baseball this summer or football in the fall. And you want to really embarrass him by putting his picture on there. You can pretty much do whatever you want that isn't obscene or a copyright violation. They will do that for you. They're excellent coolers. They make for great corporate gifts, personal gifts as well. And if you use my code Steve, you're going to save 10% at taigacoolers.com. Taiga is where you want to go. Taiga for taigacoolers.com. Use the promo code Steve for 10% off. Promo code Steve for 10% off at taigacoolers.com. All right, let's get back to your weekly look at the week that was. Here with Jordan Schachtel. Let's get to issue 3. Is America's greatest city gone?
Zohran Mamdani was born in Uganda and became an American citizen less than a decade ago. He's now poised to become the mayor of the largest city in America, New York. Mamdani is an avowed Democrat socialist, hates the police, loves Hamas, and has promised oodles of free stuff to New Yorkers, and is generally the composite Democrat in the year 2025. During his victory speech after this week's Democrat mayoral primary, Mamdani promised to be a thorn in the side of President Trump if he's elected as mayor.
Where the mayor will use their power to reject Donald Trump's fascism, to stop mass ICE agents from deporting our neighbors.
Borders are Tom Homan says,
good luck with that. Federal law trumps him every day, every hour, every minute. We're going to be in New York City. Matter of fact, because it's a sanctuary city, President Trump made it clear a week and a half ago. We're going to double down and triple down on sanctuary cities.
Again, further sign of the secret Jewish conspiracy running the world that somehow could not give the Jews their own country for 1,800 years. Somehow the most Jewish city in America, it's about to be run by a foreign-born Islamist. So, worst Jewish conspiracy ever. I want to get to the first question with something I just saw Glenn Beck post. And I hated it. Because I fear he's right. Mamdani will do for Islamism what Obama did for Marxism. In fact, I'm just going to make that my opening question. React. Todd, I'll start with you.
He's going to try, and this is a perfect opportunity to bridge the gap between the conversation we just had regarding what happened vis-a-vis Iran. That wouldn't have happened, none of it, without October 7th. And a lot of people early on had called it America's 9/11, and pound for pound, it was actually worse in terms of the death toll. But at the meta level, this is ultimately about worldviews. And if there's consequences for when somebody steps right into your living room and says, mine's better than yours, are you gonna push back with the force necessary? No, you're not. I'm calling you on that. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing. Israel and America adjacently did. But here, how many years after going on pretty close to the 25th anniversary, this is the reaction to our 9/11? That's not going to cut it. And it's not, you don't do the laugh track with just New York, blue state,
Stop
whatever.
And think about it. This is the guy who would be presiding over New York City's 25th anniversaries of 9/11 commemorations next year. Think about that.
Because what have Glenn and Steve just said? This has to be dealt with sooner or later. This will win in the end. Maybe not while Steve and I are alive, but in our children's generation, and certainly in Jordan and Aaron's children's generation, we need to stop this.
Aaron?
So I think Islamism is secondary to Zohran Mamdani's communism, inasmuch as it helps him be a transgressive tool to destroy whatever fabric of America is left in that city of New York.
Meaning if you're just a white guy, he might be easier to dismiss, but he gets double points by being a Muslim immigrant. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
Now, this is not the first socialist mayor that New York has had. Didn't Bill de Blasio?
Bill de Blasio was a literal Sandinista.
Yeah.
He literally worked for the Sandinistas in Nicaragua. Yes.
So this is not new for New York City. What is, I think, a little bit interesting here is that this guy is less than 10 years ago is what I said, became a United States citizen. We talked about this in the overtime. I understand what happens in the overtime stays in the overtime, but I'm bringing it back into the light. His most impressive, from a populist messaging standpoint, his most impressive campaign spot was making halal $8 again. Halal food truck. Chicken over rice, $8 again. We talked about this yesterday. Mm-hmm. Thought it was great messaging, just in a vacuum. Get the government out of the business of stymieing economic growth. But this is all in the context of halal. When you've got an American city, the biggest American city, and there's an entire market and seemingly an entire electorate that's interested in whether or not the price of halal is $8 versus $10, that's a pretty big freaking problem, I think. That's just me. We're so screwed. There's some days when I just think we are so back. There are other days when I think it's so over.
Because both are true.
Because both are true. We're at an inflection point in this country.
I mean, we're in the midst of unprecedented aggressive based commentary and pushback on the right. That is very true.
Yes.
Okay. But what's also true is collectively this last boomer generation dug us into a massive pit that, frankly, we are likely unable to dig ourselves out of mere moral or human political moral or will or courage alone. I mean, it's going to take real, divine, providential stuff of previous eras of American history to get out of the pit that we are in, because it's absolutely systemic. It's captured every institution. And so, yes, we are awake more than we've ever been before. We're more based than ever been before. We are more aggressive in our language and our tactics than ever before. And that's all well and good.
But as big of danger as
yes, we are.
Before.
But the pit is big. But now we are coming to grips with how big the pit is and the shovel that's going to be required to get out of this. Jordan, what say you?
Yeah, I agree with all the points that everyone's made. The devil on my shoulder says let the hipsters in Brooklyn suffer tremendously and let them live under socialism. If they want real socialism, they should get their government supermarkets and whatnot. But the patriot in me says that it would be a real shame to see New York City totally crumble like this. I grew up in Jersey. The cities are all corrupt and ruined and violent and not safe and a horrible place to raise your kids. And I don't want to see Manhattan, especially in Brooklyn and Queens, turn into those kind of places where they're just utterly gutters and horrible. There are, Steve, as you mentioned earlier in the segment, there's examples, there's kind of cautionary tales in Europe. And basically what happens, these frontline people like Mamdani, the perfect example is Khan in Mayor of London. These people aren't generally hardcore Islamists. They just won't do anything about the Islamists, and they'll call you Islamophobic for pointing out that, the call to prayer is now, playing on 200 decibel volume in the streets, and don't you dare complain about it, you bigot. And then when, the radical Islamists start to move in, then it's already too far gone. So it's a massive issue.
Almost like it's a plotted cultural deconstruction, because those are incredible coincidences, Jordan, that they always do seem to work out like that. Yeah.
No, I agree.
First they send in the dissemblers, and then they send in the deconstructors. Yes.
Yeah, the guy's a communist, so it works perfectly for him. I don't understand how the watermelon people, I don't think they ever actually debate anything, because communism and Islamism don't really intersect perfectly, but that's the whole, ideology of intersectionality. It doesn't really make any rational sense, but communism and all that stuff, their adherents don't need to. They just want to destroy everything and, burn down the city. And it would be a real shame for that to happen. All these proposals are totally insane. And I hope that, the sane people in New York can kind of band together to pick a general election candidate and, that everyone can kind of support whoever that person is, despite whatever their label is. If it's like a corrupt mafia boss, I'll take the corrupt mafia boss over the communist Islamist watermelon guy.
All right, so let's take the exit question here. How much should the right invest to save these blue cities surrendering to the spirit of the age? Because I'm a big proponent of we need to spend we don't have unlimited time and resources. We should spend it more on making sure Alabama is worth its reputation than it is on these blue cities. But I understand Jordan's point as well. Gentlemen, what do you think? Quickly.
I think something that Chris Rufo wrote this week was very prescient. Is that this was done intentionally in New York. This package was done intentionally in New York because that's an area where it could actually succeed. And so you could give the illusion, or at least the impression, that this is a broader national movement when it might not actually be. So I think with this guy in particular, I think it does warrant some resources being used to stop him, because I do think we need to give the devil his due. He's very talented. The way he ran his campaign was very good. So I think this might warrant using some resources to stop him, just because I think there's a broader national threat. You view him as a forerunner?
Yes. Okay, fair. Todd, where you at? Quickly, go.
If saving means consequences, max prejudice. Make them suffer for their choices.
Okay, that's kind of where I'm at. But Aaron, I think just made a compelling argument.
I don't think they are sufferable. I don't think they know how to suffer.
All right, Jordan, you get the last word. Quickly, go.
Yeah, it kind of a mix. Embolden red areas, make sure they stay red, reinforce our, citadels. But I think at least in providing intellectual and political capital to saving these huge cities, I think it's worth it.
All right, let's get to the kicker topic. New York aside, what do you think is America's greatest city and why? Aaron.
This is going to be really weird, but I really enjoyed the couple of days that I spent there a couple of years ago. Muscatine, Iowa. It is a cool little city.
Okay.
It is. I spent a couple days in downtown. They've got like a nice 4-star hotel that was really inexpensive. Lots of places to eat. Lots of things to do. It was actually very surprisingly cool.
Muscatine, Iowa.
Yeah, that's my.
Okay.
That's my.
It does have a good downtown. I've been there.
All right. Shout out to the Chamber of Commerce there at Muscatine. All right. Todd, what about you?
Very underrated city, Cleveland.
Cleveland is very underrated. I mean, it really is. We went there a couple summers ago just to visit the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, stayed an extra day or two. We loved it.
I've been there
Went to a ball game, went to the house of where they filmed A Christmas Story. We were blown away. We thought it was a real underrated gem.
Yeah.
Agreed. Now, I'll say this. I loved pre-COVID New York City was my favorite city. I loved New York City. I loved going to New York for events. Not a place I want to live just because that level of commuter lifestyle, just not what I'm about, okay? But in terms of a place to visit and everything you could possibly ever want to do, and the ability to get there in a relatively, the traffic in Denver I found to be way worse than New York City, frankly. I loved pre-COVID New York City. It breaks my heart to see what has happened to it. What about you, Jordan?
Yeah, pre-COVID New York was great. As a Florida shill now, I would say the Miami metro area, South Florida, it's incredible what's happening here, under Governor DeSantis' leadership and just, the general solidity of the population, very, ethnically, racially diverse, whatever you want to call it, intellectually diverse, but still like solid foundations, really quality red state. We have some awful politicians here, but the Miami metro is, continuing to amaze me and really love it here as a Floridian.
You know what I think I'd vote for? First of all, I love the state of Tennessee and always have. Okay. But I think I'd vote for Franklin, Tennessee. I'm a suburb guy. It's maybe my favorite suburb in America. It's right there close to Nashville. You get the right 3 seasons. You can have a little bit of snow every now and then to make you feel like it's Christmas or winter, but not the kind that's just going to make you hate life and not see the sun for 3 months. I think Franklin, Tennessee might be my favorite city, actually. Because you can live away from inner city problems, but be close to literally anything you'd ever want to do ever at the exact same time.
Nashville should be way more red than it is, though.
That's why I'm living in Franklin. You're right. That's why I like Franklin. I agree, because I would be commuting to Nashville a lot because I love Nashville, but I think I'd rather be in Franklin. All right, let's get to our predictions. Aaron, go.
Eric Adams will end up winning re-election in New York City.
Man, I hope you are right, but I don't think you are. But I hope you are.
Yeah, totally disagree. What's his name? Zoltan? What's his name?
Zoltan the Destroyer.
Yeah, he's gonna go full Pedro. I will make all your dreams come true. Because where the hell are the men of New York? You're pathetic eunuchs. He's gonna promise everybody, I will guarantee a Jets versus Giants Super Bowl.
Did you see a victory party
and
for?
Everybody will vote for him.
Did you see Mamdani's? Did you see his victory party?
No.
Just wall-to-wall white women. A few fellow Muslims there, but wall-to-wall white women. It looked like the speechwriters' room in the Biden administration, the writers' room for Star Wars. Wall-to-wall white women in that victory party, man. Wall-to-wall.
Well, if he wins, that's my point. Where are the men? What are they doing in New York?
So you predict he is going to win. All right, that's your prediction? Jordan, what's your prediction? It doesn't have to be about Mamdani. It can be about anything you want.
We'll make it about Mamdani. I think he's going to win too. New Yorkers, growing up there, stubbornly refuse to vote. I think it's going to take, unfortunately, the reality of having this man in charge of the world's most powerful city to have them wake up, because they think that they're above voting. And I don't think that this election will be an exception. They'll just be like, oh, he's not really a socialist. And my girlfriend likes him or something like that. And they'll just rationalize staying home.
See, I actually think this would be the best case scenario. Intellectually, my heart wants Aaron to be right, but intellectually, the dad in me thinks some folks have got to suffer more.
Do you think
they just haven't suffered enough? They need to learn the hard way.
I'm not sure the Mamdani coalition is capable of connecting those dots. I'm just not.
Okay.
But those guys are so. I mean, we talked yesterday about the whole vibe stuff. They aren't. Absolutely. The federal government unapologetically just needs to crush them in every way they can. Pull every bit of funding. Yes, they don't know. They don't know true suffering. I want to find out. Let's make it happen.
My prediction is piggyback off a prediction I made about a month ago when I predicted that John Cornyn would just retire from the Senate rather than facing a humiliating defeat in his primary. I still think that will occur. But I think that Trump is going to actually end up endorsing Congressman Wesley Hunt for that Senate seat and not Ken Paxton. I think that they will. I think there's a bit of a charm offensive right now, getting Wesley Hunt out there as a black conservative. And I think you'll end up seeing Trump endorse Wesley Hunt for that Senate seat and not Ken Paxton. Just a prediction. Jordan, good to see you as always. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It's great.
You bet. All right, we'll come back. It'll be your turn with some Feedback Friday. When we do, stay tuned. And we are back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast, alongside Todd Erzen and Aaron McIntire. I'm Steve Deace. Please let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox, which you can do by emailing the show. Steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Please also don't forget to subscribe to our new YouTube channel at Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace Show on YouTube. And then finally, if you wouldn't mind, please, if you love the podcast version of the show, let other people know that you do by leaving us a 5-star review. Literally tens of thousands of you have done that. We appreciate each and every single one. And then you can hit subscribe, or if you're on Apple iTunes, follow, and that will make sure that every time we do a new episode, you can be assured that it's there, right there in your podcast feed. And at least tens of thousands of you have done that for us too. So let's keep that going as well. Thank you very much. And let's keep going the generosity that you guys are showing to our friends over at Preborn. Last year, Preborn saved almost 70,000 babies, and the generosity of the partnership here that they have via the Blaze was a huge part and played a big role in that. You can make a tax-deductible donation today for whatever amount, but did you know for as little as $28 you can fund an ultrasound that gives a baby better than 2-to-1 odds of surviving its mom? And then also maybe saving the mom's soul in the process. right? But they don't just stop there. They're there with prenatal care, postnatal care, practical things like car seats, counseling. They do all this for the mom and her baby for free. But those things, of course, still cost. And that's where we come in. We pick those costs up. You can make that tax-deductible donation today at preborn.com/Steve. That's preborn.com/Steve, preborn.com/Steve, or dial pound 250, say the keyword baby on your mobile phone, pound 250, keyword baby on your mobile phone. Quick little housekeeping thing. A few of you have contacted me and said, hey, weren't you guys doing like a Theology Thursday, Ask Me Anything, the last Thursday of the month throughout the course of the Roman study? So why didn't you do that yesterday? The answer is yes, but we didn't do it yesterday. Here's why. We are going to be moving in to our new studio here in about 3-4 weeks. Okay. And while we're transitioning the equipment from one location to another, you guys will get an evergreen or two. And one of those evergreens you're going to get will be a full 2 hours, right? So because we missed this month, right? And so we'll put next month's Theology Thursday, Ask Me Anything together with this month. You'll get a full 2-hour Theology Thursday, Ask Me Anything, and we'll get to as many of your questions for the full 2 hours as we can to make up for it. So we didn't forget. We're just in the midst of planning out. For example, if you were here today, you would see behind me and the cameras we had yesterday, we had stacks of boxes. All right. So we're getting ready to move into our new permanent location. And we're going to have that be one of the special episodes you get while the live equipment is being uninstalled here and reinstalled over there. All right. So wanted to make sure I answered that for you guys. Okay. You ready to go with some Feedback Friday?
Yes.
All right. Let's begin with Eric Barton. Says, hey, I wanted to address the feedback you had from Keith last week. Remember Keith?
No.
Keith was the guy upset that I would never say to the women,
oh, sure.
Yeah, Happy Father's Day if you earned it.
Sure.
Okay, that there was a total double standard there. To which I said, you bet there's a double standard and it's on purpose and they're supposed to be. Men are to be held to a higher standard. That's the reality of headship. Okay. So Eric wants to respond to that. He goes, I will try to keep it simple, so I will not be using words like misandry, which I love that word. As I listened to the note from Keith, I also felt a little frustration. I'm listening to this man that I do not know, lamenting how you tell us to have a good Father's Day if you earned it, and then to go on about how he is seething over your double standard of man over woman. Good. There should be a double standard, because there are so many men out there that are weak, cowardly, and complacent boys that need to be taken out back and taught a lesson. Todd, did you go? Is this your burner account?
It is not, but this is my new boyfriend.
Yes. Oh. Just because you got some chick pregnant does not mean you deserve to be pampered and receive gifts and celebrated one day a year. That respect and honor is earned and worked for every day, and it doesn't end until the Lord says it is over. To address this feedback again, Keith and men like Keith should be saying, you aren't hard enough on us. You aren't hard enough on us, because you aren't. I know that I'm not a perfect father to my 2 children, and the Lord is still working on things in my life, and I'm a wicked sinner saved by grace that I don't deserve. I could continue on and on, but I will stop there. I apologize for the long feedback. Greatly appreciate you, Todd and Aaron, what you guys do.
He gets it, man. I mean, I just saw a data point today. I don't know if it's true, but it rings true. And we were just talking about YouTube recently and how it's the biggest search engine.
Yep, for video. Yeah.
But the number of money that YouTube brings in absolutely is dwarfed by the amount that OnlyFans brings in.
Is that true?
Now, I just saw it. I didn't have a chance to verify it, but if it...
That wouldn't surprise me. There's rumors that YouTube operates at a loss.
You can't take for granted. It might be the hardest. It's simultaneously the hardest fix, but it's the easiest solution. If men are real men, a lot of the things we talk about get fixed. If they're not, and right now they don't want to be, and they resent being asked, but we are the modern American, and this. We're not just going to blame the Zoltans in New York. The modern American Christian conservative
We're going to give that guy 15 names by the time this is over. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
The modern American Christian conservative male is a very, very soft individual.
Agreed. I don't think there's any systemic, how you could possibly deny that systemically.
I just think there are multiple things that can be true at the same time. One thing is true. Life can be hard. You know, in fact, I'm going to embarrass Todd here. He never complained about this, but when I first started working here, what were you doing in the mornings, Todd, before you came to work here in the afternoons? And in between busing your
Oh,
family.
that's right. He was working the UPS truck.
Yes.
Forgot that.
I got a second job. Yeah.
Not a fun job, probably.
Oh, no.
Loading trucks at UPS, I did that in college, brother. That is not easy work.
Okay.
That is real work. Yeah.
Not a fun. It's true that for the majority of people and majority of men, your jobs probably aren't that fun. Okay? I'm blessed to do what I get to do. So I'm saying this with as much humility as I possibly can. Not fun. It's a grind. Feeding the beast is hard. It's very hard. Life is hard sometimes. For the majority of people, majority of men throughout history, life is just tough. Okay? That's true. Another thing can be true. In our society right now, the odds and the rules for a better life are stacked against white heterosexual men. Would anybody dispute that?
No. But
okay, that's also true.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What is also true, the third thing that's true simultaneously, is that history is made and changed by men who act.
Mm-hmm.
Those things, all those things, three things can be true at the same time.
You sure it's not Netflix and chilling, Aaron?
Well,
sure?
I think that's the conclusion that a lot of people come to. So we can hold all of these things simultaneously. Guess what? I just think, regardless of time period, regardless of technological advancement, regardless of really how much money you make, living out God's design for your life is going to be hard. It's going to take sacrifice. It's going to take suffering sometimes. A lot of times. Most of the time, probably. That's just true of everybody. True of everybody in human existence. So the message to men is just make your peace with that and then act. Do your job and act. That's all.
Very well said. Cynthia Clark in Tennessee says, I got my autographed copy of Richie Meets the Rainbow. And then I bought 7 more to put it in the libraries and schools in my community. I've already dropped 3 of them off at the libraries. One of those being the largest library in the county. I'm trying to do my part. Thanks for all you guys do. I listen every single day. That is
love that.
Incredible. That's incredible. Thank you. And I'm just very humbled, Cynthia. Thank you. And I've gotten several other notes like this from you folks, and just, I'll just say it again. Thank you guys. I mean, you guys are why we do this, and the best part of getting to do this as well. Charles writes, I bought Richie last week. I left it on the top of the counter of my kitchen for my kids to find it just to see what their reaction was going to be. My son, who's 13, picks it up and says, how did this get here, Dad? I told him that I bought this LGBTQ FU book for him and his sister. He got ticked at me, but then I told him, just read it, because I think you will be in for a surprise. He reads it and comes to me with a smile and says, this is good. His sister, 11, read the book over the weekend, and I asked her yesterday what she thought about it, and she looks at me with a smile and says, this thing is pretty genius. I'm bringing this thing to school. That's from Charles. Yes. Nothing wrong with a little subversiveness. It's, you know, we were talking about Mamdani and all the rest of the subversiveness used against us in the culture. Jesus said the children of men are smarter than the children of light. Why don't we borrow some of their tactics? Now, we can't borrow all their tactics because, you know, we have a higher law that we have to be held to. They're, again, double standards. Sinful creations need double standards. You know who doesn't believe in any double standards? Egalitarians, who think human nature is basically good and deny that human nature is sinful. How's that historically worked out typically? No double standards at all. How's that worked out?
Things are great, Steve.
Yeah, they're going well. Egalitarianism, I think, has a great record of sustainable ethics and human flourishing here over the last century or two.
What's a woman, Steve?
Indeed. Yeah, it's working out well. We're going well. We're crushing it right now. No, we're not. No, we're not. So there has to be double standards because we're sinners. That's why there has to be double standards. So yes, there has to be, you know what? I'll give one to the guys. There has to be a double standard the other way. For example, all right, women have lust issues, women have sexual temptations, but they are not walking around with little sperm-producing factories between their legs all the time, just dying for release. They don't have to deal with that. At the same time that that you're a visually stimulated creature. And what is it we have ample supplies of in our culture today, gentlemen. Visual stimulation. You're just telling us about what about OnlyFans makes more money than YouTube, right? Okay. So put those two things together. That math doesn't really work, does it? So lo and behold, it actually works out that there's a double standard for women to put a check and balance on that aspect of male behavior by not encouraging it. Well, the way they used to not encourage it anyway. Now you kind of do. But the way you used to was a good check and balance. It kept us in line. We needed it. Thank you. So yeah, that was a double standard. Double standards are needed. They are needed when we are sinful creatures because we are incapable of perfect equality. The best we can do is offer equality of opportunity, but we cannot offer equality of outcome. And therefore, since we cannot guarantee an equality of outcome, that means what is absolutely impossible and unavoidable. Double standards. It's like what you said about your days as an umpire. Some were better than others. Some were worse than others. But the goal was, were you consistent in either being worse than others or better than others? If you had a tighter strike zone than the other guy, did you call it the same for everybody? Then they can adjust. You can learn this is where this guy's at. Those are the rules. I can live within that. What you can't live in is when you don't know what the rules are, and then there's no standards, right? And that's inconsistency. Can't have that, okay? We have to account for the fact human nature has limitations. It's just, you have to. So yes, you should coach your daughters, as I did mine, to be very careful about being alone with boys who are little sperm-producing factories. Unless you're entirely sure the person is trustworthy. You should put those limits on them, yes. You should go to your daughters and say, I don't know that you necessarily should wear that to church, for example. It's not the beach. Total double standard, but it is what it is. We're in a fallen world, sinful world. That's just the realities of the world. It just so happens that because of the current state of the men, I just think it's funny if anybody that's ever been around either one of your daughters or mine who are now grown. The idea that they are now just, they now operate in an existence of zero responsibility and expectations because none were put on them by having you as me as their dads. I find that to be hilarious.
It
okay. Is. But we're in, what's the era of the culture we're in right now? Systemically, predominantly, which side of the species is not doing its part on our side? Because on their side, the women are just weapons of mass destruction. We were just talking about weapons of mass destruction. We were just talking about Mamdani's victory party the other night was wall-to-wall white women, right? But we're not talking to their side. We're not trying to energize their side. We're not trying to. Should I just keep going? Yeah. Okay. We're not trying to motivate, coach their side, mobilize their side. We're trying to do this to our own side. Okay. Yeah, exactly. And so on our own side, which side of the species predominantly is not carrying its weight?
The men.
The men are.
And it's not even close.
Right. So you and I are talking to how many of tens of thousands of people on this show every day? All three of us are. So the idea that we can just like individually address situations like we could with our own kids is not realistic by nature of the platform, right? All right. So by nature of the platform, we have to address systemic issues. And so systemically, who's the problem right now? The men or the women?
The men.
The men are. And so that's why we're going to address that systemic problem.
That all the more when they react to us like Keith did by doing it very emotionally. Like yes. If it's not you, if you're really doing guy stuff, you move on to your stuff.
Correct. The typical reaction to a guy who is in a corporate setting, because again, we're not talking to you individually. You're one of tens of thousands of men at a minimum that are listening to this at some point, right? All right. So if the coach is sitting there, hey man, if you're down 9-0 and the manager's losing his mind in the dugout, but you're 4 for 4, are you like offended? You're 4 for 4. You did everything you could. You're not offended that the manager's losing his mind because you know you did your job, right? All right. So there are two reactions that a man in a good place in his life has when being challenged in a corporate setting. A, he's like, I got to step up. B, it's like, preach it, brother. I'm doing what I can. It's never C. It's never, you're too hard on us. Don't do that. I mean, it's like, can you yell at them for a while? That's never is a tough word, but it's never the right response for a man when challenged in a corporate setting. He either A, is convicted and says, I got to do more, I got to step up. B, realizes, man, I'm doing everything I can do, so I hope everybody else that isn't pulling their weight gets the message. He's never C. He's never like, that was unfair. That wasn't nice. Hey, how you gonna yell at us? Never has that reaction if you're in a good place. Fair?
Yeah.
Just not a manly reaction. Let's talk about our friends over at Beam. Speaking of hard work, self-reliance, showing up for the people who count on us, Beam wants to help you make sure you can do that with the best night's sleep you can get. And their Dream Powder from Beam, that is a company proudly founded in America, run by Americans who share our values. All right. Beam's Dream Powder, you can put it to the test and it's going to be lights out. I've done the same thing. Man, you sleep so deeply that when the alarm goes off, you're like, it can't be morning already. All right. No 3 a.m. pacing in the hallway. No 6 a.m. fog. I mean, Beam is so good, it even cuts down on how many times I have to get up in the middle of the night to pee. At my age, that's putting something to the test. All right. They've got plenty of flavors. A little hot cocoa before bedtime. Never hurt anybody. Don't worry. It's not loaded with sugar and carbs. Not going to break your lifestyle healthy that you're trying to do. All right. So Beam is giving you guys right now the ultimate Patriot discount of up to 40% off for trying their Dream Powder. They've got several flavors. I do the chocolate peanut butter, but there's other flavors out there you can try as well. You can get up to 40% off for a limited time if you go to shopbeam.com, SHOPBEAM, Beam as in laser beam. Shopbeam.com/Steve. If you use the code Steve at checkout, you can get up to 40% off at shopbeam.com/Steve. Use the code Steve for up to 40% off at shopbeam.com/Steve using the promo code Steve. Dina Napoli writes, where I live, there are a lot of those free libraries people put up in their yards to share books in the community. Most of them are left-leaning, so I frequently leave Christian books to share. I bought extra copies of Richie Meets the Rainbow and started leaving them in the libraries. I thought you'd like to know how your book is being shared out in the world. Thanks for writing it and giving us a tool to fight back against the rainbow jihad. Wow.
Yeah, not all heroes wear capes, Steve.
Now you're dropping it off at the neighbors. Now I think you'll respect this, Dina. Ballsy. Okay. So, well done. Let's go. Yeah, I got time for this one from Chad.
Good job powering through the power outage there.
Yes. I have no idea. Is the audience going to realize this?
Yeah, we lost video for a little bit.
Did we lose it for a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Let's see here. Chad. I think one of the key questions the right needs to be asking is how do you break through a propaganda system that is so pervasive that most people are unreachable by the time you even have access to them? My wife is arguing with people online that insist all of the evidence shows that January 6th was an evil takeover attempt and from an above-the-law dictator, and that we are rewarding lawlessness and now depriving poor innocent Americans of due process rights. Nothing will change their minds because the narrative is so pervasive. They just call her the brainwashed one over and over. I personally think that all successful efforts align with God's truth and or human nature or both. Like capitalism generally harnessing self-interest to do great things. Similarly, I think they have to be reached young and explained to how everything the left tells them is actually fake compassion weaponized against their own interests so they don't fall for all the cry bullying. I'm not sure how to reach them in young enough numbers, or how to reach the young in large enough numbers. That's probably what people like I see Charlie Kirk trying to do. They won't divert from the easy path without understanding what's in it for them in this life or the next. My point is that so many are just lost to these narratives. There might be some amount eventually that'll be sick enough that they will eventually rebel. But I'm not sure natural consequences is the way to go, given how deep the narrative is. What we appear we're going to find that out in New York City here. So.
We haven't really tried. Come on. This is what we always underestimate. And you arguing, debating, changing minds in real time is hard even under the best of circumstances when it's not demonically oriented, and now that it is, it's very challenging. So don't let what's going on just on social media be your litmus test. But don't you also like that? We have barely begun, and this is true. You see it what's going on in Iran. I mean, the status quo is the status quo until it isn't anymore, and the status quo for our adult lifetime has just been a level of adult cruise control and live and let live and you do you and YOLO and normal human history would have, lit up this nonsense a long, long time ago. You got to try some real natural consequences.
I think I agree with that too. I mean, I have to agree with that. I'm the guy sharing the after a fair trial gallows meme for the last 3 years, right? But one of the more low-key, chilling things that has happened over the last 5 years for me is when we were in the depths of the initial lockdowns. And Aaron, you made the observation that there's just no way people are going to tolerate this for long periods of time because it gets in the way of their debauchery, their depravity, the life of luxury, where most Americans have a garage that would be in the top 10%, maybe 5% sized homes in the rest of the world. Okay. And I remember you and I thought, man, that's a great take, Aaron. You're right about that. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know we both did. Okay. And we were like, yeah, eventually the rubber's going to meet the road here. It's kind of the perfect time. All right. Sporting, it's kind of the terrible time in the Midwest and in the Northeast where winter's technically over, but it's drizzly and melting and chilly, and the sporting events for now are gone. But then when the weather gets hot here this summer, people want to get back and get out to normal, get outside. Right. These are all the things we said, right? They're going to miss going to the movies, all the kind of stuff we're accustomed to. And then we got about 3 months after Aaron made what we thought at the time was an absolutely brilliant observation. And it dawned on us, we found something here that people care more about even than their comfort. And that is compliance. The eagerness to be seen as a supplicant, as a compliant person to the spirit of the age, and then to try to impose that on my fellow American, okay? That's even worse than a comfort, luxury addicted culture, because then you can still use natural causes, right? Like a coach taking playing time away from a kid in order to get him to go to class and to shape up, right? Okay. But if we're at the point now that I would rather be compliant to the spirit of the age, even more than enjoy the accoutrements of said spirit of the age and its sensual pleasures, yikes.
But they could do it and we realized, and this is part of my turning things up to 11 on criticizing the men about certain and Sports Pro, they could be compliant while being very, very comfortable. The nagging left, they still had their cell phone. They could still be scolds. They could nag even more. The conservative Christian men, hey, I'm just going to go down to the basement and watch what I always watch. I just think everybody just say, let's all just go to our corners here. It's like my Bud Light argument. You didn't really die on any hill. You just all went over there and started drinking Coors Light. That's the comfort goes so much deeper. How much did even all those of us who really hated COVID, if you wanted to, you could just stay pretty comfortable and do what you always do anyways. That's a problem.
Yeah, my take on that period of time is I thought our comfort was actually going to bring us out. Our addiction to comfort was going to bring us out of the lockdowns. It was actually what kept us in it.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there was the virtue signaling that I'm compliant, I'm a nice person, I'm a virtuous person, but it was the addiction to comfort that actually kept us locked down, because anything that threatened that comfort was to be avoided. And the American public, by and large, bought the lie, hook, line, and sinker, that this thing was, what was the movie that we always talked about a pandemic? I think it was Stephen King movie.
The Stand.
The Stand.
Captain Trips.
The people thought that this was The Stand.
Mm-hmm.
And so that threatened their comfort. And so their mechanism to stay comfortable was complying. That's how I viewed it.
Fair. Let's go to Christopher Jones, who says, I hope you guys can give me some advice. I'm 100% pro-life. However, when libs ask me what I would do if my wife's life was in danger unless the baby was aborted, what would I do? I believe, and biblically, that my wife comes first, so I would have to end the pregnancy. Then they always say I'm a hypocrite and that I'm pro-abortion. I don't consider that pro-abortion, so how do I explain this to libs, pro-choice friends, and people? You're falling for a false choice.
Yeah, don't.
Christopher. In fact, I was presented this choice on the evening that Noah was being born. All right. He caused Amy to go into a coma, had to be delivered via an emergency C-section. The OBGYN who was on staff that night at the hospital for overnight literally came out to me and told me I may have to make a choice, my wife or my son. You know what I told him? This is not. This is the year 2007, not 1877. I don't have to make that choice. You have to choose to do your damn job. That's what has to be chosen to do. We don't. It's infinitesimal. Okay, we're not sitting here. We're not sitting here making sure that arguing with Semmelweis about washing our hands before giving birth to women, letting women give birth, and trying to figure out if that's the reason childbirth is the number one cause of death for women. It's the 21st century. It's an infinitesimal amount of times. Microscopic. That this is a legit quandary. So this argument is a complete false choice. Doesn't have to be made. By the way, just graduated Noah a month ago. He's on his post-grad. We gave all of our kids a post-grad trip that we paid for as a graduation gift wherever they wanted to go. He's actually down in Dallas with the team down at Believe that he went and interned with last year to go down and visit them. All right, working full-time. He's good. Mom's got 4 degrees. She's good. Total BS. Don't fall for a false choice.
Don't be the nicer than God Christian. Somebody asks you this question, the proper response is, you're the one who just wants to kill all the babies no matter what, don't you? I think we're done here.
If anything, just turn it right around on them and say, okay, fine, how about I'll give you the ones if mom's life is at stake. Let's just put that bill on the governor's desk right now, right? Just ban them all.
That's mine.
And you know what they'll say? They will fight you on that. All right? All right, so there's a reason why the old saying is the devil is in the details, because the devil always goes to the details in order to demonstrate that he is opposed to the premise. What's the devil's opening line in creation? What is it? Did God really say? Let's discuss the details. All right, so don't fall for that false choice. Today's technology makes it an infinitesimal, microscopic amount of times. But if you really want to, you want to expose the fallacy of the other side, just take Todd's tactic and say, fine, how about we'll just have Trump tomorrow sign a bill banning all abortions except if mom's life is sincerely at stake. They won't take that deal. I promise you. They won't. Because their father's the devil. So they're trying to mire you in the details because that's his game plan. More in a moment. All right, let's get back to some Feedback Friday here as we close out our final segment of the Steve Deace Show. This is from Rusty Ringler. What a great name that is, by the way. Rusty Ringler. That is a cool name. That's like...
Is it real?
I hope so. That's like I'm the quarterback of the Texas Longhorns. I'm Rusty Ringler. Handing off to Earl Campbell. It's a great name. Rusty says, the reason I wanted to contact you guys is to touch base on the country of Iran. My oldest son is a full-time member of the Air National Guard. He married a young woman from Iran a couple of years ago. She was a visa student attending Iowa State, and getting to know her has been incredibly enlightening. My son and daughter-in-law are very active in the Persian community here in central Iowa. They have many friends who are Iranian citizens who are working and studying in the United States. These are some of the most patriotic, freedom-loving individuals you will find. In fact, our country would be a much better place if more people in their age group were as proud of American values, ideologies, freedoms, and opportunities as people like my daughter-in-law happens to be. I heard you mention recently on your show skepticism regarding the desire of the Iranian people for regime change due to their lack of action. While it's true I cannot speak for the entire population and my daughter-in-law and her friends are not representative of it, I can say this: they are extraordinarily passionate about the desire for a free Iran. Even more recently, my daughter-in-law spoke about the precision strikes by Israel, even while her mother, father, and sister have fled Tehran in order to ensure their safety. She continues to express her hope that they go all the way, meaning she does not want want to miss this opportunity. She doesn't want this destruction and disruption to fall short of what she perceives as a necessary step, which would be to overthrow of Iran's oppressive regime. When I shared your similar sentiment regarding the Iranian people and how if they really want freedom, they need to stand up and do something about it, she reminded me that the population is weaponless and easy targets of incarceration and execution. And not just for the person who speaks out, but the family, friends, and associates of those who may dare to stand up to the current regime. It's incredibly easy for Americans to beat our chest and sound courageous as we talk about how we would have stood up to the Nazis, how we would have never succumbed to living under North Korean isolation, or how we would stand up to an oppressive Iranian government, but that's a lie. We witnessed during COVID a complete lack of courage among the U.S. people. Now, here's the thing. I don't think this is a fair comparison at all, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But let me finish. If we couldn't refuse to mask at the risk of being asked to leave a store, would we really stand up to a government at the risk of death or imprisonment of ourselves or our family, and would we do it unarmed? I send this simply to say my exposure to the young people of Iran here locally has been eye-opening and enlightening to say the least. Like you, I too pray for peace and pray that God will guide the decision-makings of President Trump and our other world leaders. I also pray that the world will someday see what I've seen, that the beauty of the Persian people who do long to taste freedom again in their country. Again, that's from a guy with a very cool name in Rusty Ringler. On the comparison, it's just not, it's not a fair comparison, but maybe not for reasons that you'll like. We have way, just as we were just talking about it, way more comfort here. Right? I mean, we are actually wanting, to some degree, Mamdani to get elected in New York City in order for there to be more consequences for beliefs and actions that when you attain a certain amount of luxury, you think you now have the privilege of entertaining, right? You know, they don't have any of the temptations of comforts in Iran that we do. And so I don't think the situations are analogous at all. Do you see what I'm trying to say? Like they're not being placated with the kinds of things that we're being placated by. So again, I'm not saying it's a flattering objection, but I don't think the situations are analogous because the Iranian people that are there are directly living under consequences by this regime and from this regime that most Americans, you know, are blessed to never even have to contemplate, let alone live through on a daily basis. So I don't think the situations are analogous, but I found the rest of the note to be fascinating and interesting. So I'll throw it open to you guys. What do you think?
It's undeniably true that it's much harder for them to rise up than Americans have to rise up against anything. But it has to happen nonetheless. I mean, you can't, just because it's harder, it can't be avoided. But he's right, absolutely right. I think it's perfectly analogous with his comparison to COVID. I mean, Americans are largely ingrates and cowards. And if that's the implication of what, I mean, and honestly, somebody who has managed to get out of there, flee, male or female, and is now looking around them and saying, I'm trying really hard to be American. Why aren't you? Don't you know how lucky you are? I got nothing but respect for that person because they're absolutely right.
I mean, my point was the stuff that we just said is what compelled people to comply with COVID in our country. The people of Iran don't even have a sniff of that kind of stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're not shackled to their own appetites and delights the way that we are. Right. Yep. That's the point I was trying to make. And so what I would be, and this is where, again, worldview matters. All right. So one of the reasons why Mamdani can get elected in New York City, and someone pointed this out to me in my inbox this week, and thank you. If I remembered your name, I'd throw it out there, but I don't. I'm sorry. That we've actually had, a high foreign-born population in New York for a century, going back to, when my ancestors immigrated here from Italy and Sicily at the turn of the 20th century, right? Okay. So the number of 40% may be a little higher than what it has been, but there has been a massive, since we opened Ellis Island, basically, there has been a higher disposition of foreign-born citizens in New York City than America writ large for generations already. Fair. I think that many of the people that would have stood up to what Mamdani represents moved. They live in Florida now. They live in Texas now. They live in North Carolina now. You see what I'm saying? And so they moved. And so a lot of the critical mass worldview that you would need at the polls to oppose Mamdani has already evacuated the situation. And what you're left with now, by and large, take a drink, are the people that are either too complacent to stand up to it or are down with it. And that's what you just saw. And part of it, let's not also underestimate the fact that his opponent was somebody who murdered a lot of the voters' grandparents and parents, or was at least willing to. I mean, I kind of think running a guy who might have been, responsible for killing somebody's grandparents in a nursing home, there's a shelf life to that guy as a candidate. He's got a ceiling. Fair? Okay? That all being said, all the worldview challenges that Mamdani represents, his rise represents, were already there as demonstrated by the rise of AOC, for example. Okay? So the same thing applies here maybe in Iran. That a lot of the people who possess the worldview that would have taken advantage of this moment are gone. Like, the Persian community we have here in central Iowa, for example. Iran is a country that is like 92% Sharia. And all of the worst Islamic countries in the world for tyranny on their own people are all Shia. Where's the critical mass of worldview just may not be there. It just may not be there.
I think that's true. Critical mass of worldview might not be there in both places.
Yeah,
we argue that's what this show is all about.
Yeah.
Worldview show. You've been asking this before COVID, before Trump, before anything. Do we have the worldview to sustain the country as it was designed?
No.
It's a regular question. And a lot of people, you ask them that, like, come on, man, stop bugging me. I got video games to play. I mean, and so whose sin is the greater? The one who has excuses over there in Iran, or the one who has excuses over here with a Christian worldview?
I'm doing a search right now. What are your thoughts on that, Aaron? That just the worldview just is not there, either in New York City because people have evacuated it, and Iran because people have evacuated it.
Yeah. The main reason, of course, that there's no organized resistance in Iran is because organized resistance is illegal. So that's a problem in and of itself. I'm not sure how much to make of the mass exodus from Iran, how lenient they are with letting people go. I did cite that Iranian national, that sniper for the IRGC who was arrested, I believe, in Alabama earlier this week. Well, he came to America, he married, and his wife is now saying, you got this all wrong. Mm-hmm. They all have to serve in the military over there. At least the men do anyway. So, I don't really like abusing the marriage process that way. But in terms of actually, I don't know what the ratio of Islamists versus let's just give a piece a chance population is in Iran. Because here's the reality. They did have an Islamic revolution there. That didn't just happen because a handful of mullahs decided that they wanted to overthrow the government. There was a populist uprising in Iran in favor of the Islamist takeover. That's still there today. So it's not, these things aren't necessarily easy to quantify at all. And in terms of New York City, this goes to what I was saying about, is it even possible for people to learn lessons? Is it? And I can be persuaded by the argument. Let's find out. But because of what you just said, there's a mass exodus of people from New York City and places like New York City fleeing to places like Florida, Texas. So the people who are left behind, if it fails, if it is a spectacular failure, will they be even be able to connect the dots on why it failed? I would argue no. Now, do I want them to just suffer for suffering's sake? No. I want them to learn lessons, but I'm not even sure how you can teach. I don't know how receptive they would actually be to learning a lesson. That's my concern. And so my concern with just letting Mamdani go is that it'll spread.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's a launching point for a broad. I mean, nobody thought Barack Obama had a chance. I had relatives in Illinois when he was still, I think, a state senator who said, this dude is going to be president someday. You watch it. And at a national stage, nobody thought that was going to be possible, that basically a freshman senator would be able to go to the national spotlight. Yet it happened. When you get singular individuals who are very down to earth, capable of communicating, and who have a vision, even though that vision, if you look under the hood, is just a rotting, festering corpse that has been tried and tried and tried over and over again and failed and failed and failed over and over again. As long as the veneer is nice and shiny, happy people, this country has proven that those types of people can go places.
So I just looked. Grok says at least 150,000 New Yorkers have relocated to Florida alone in the 2020s since COVID. All right. Now that's New York State as a whole. But since New York City is the overwhelming population hub of New York State, would you be willing to bet that at least 50% of those people probably were from New York City, one of the 5 boroughs of New York City, just in terms of population demographics, probably, right? Okay. The reason why I bring that up, that'd be roughly 75,000 people. That's pretty close to the margin of victory that Mamdani had in that primary on Tuesday. Okay. So, again, not all those people are going to vote. They're not all going to vote in a Democrat primary, probably. But my point being, just that rudimentary math alone, right there, just one, outbound sector of population loss from New York to Florida alone, before we even get to other places where they have gone, would have been a huge chunk of potential people to vote against Mamdani in that New York primary, and they're not there anymore. Now let's do the same thing for North Carolina. Let's do the same thing for Tennessee. Let's do the same thing for Texas, right? And my guess is you're gonna get to a sizable voting block that is just not there to draw from that well anymore. It's gone. They left. They evacuated.
I mean, this type of stuff. I think it was Oron who pointed this out this week. This type of stuff is to New York what the Arab Spring was for the Muslim world. Basically, exporting Islam by destruction, essentially, refugees. And you're exporting communism via.
Now, here's the positive of that. Here's the positive of that analogy, though. The Arab Spring did not turn out the way everybody thought it was going to turn out.
Nope.
People got the full, unfettered, no chaser, intravenous, injection of Islamism, and there were actually several Islamic cultures that said that's going to be a no from us, dog. For example, is Saudi Arabia more welcoming to foreigners and women before or after the Arab Spring?
After.
After. Does Israel have more Arab partners before or after the Arab Spring?
After.
After. So this could be an argument the other way, to your point, Aaron, which is this is exactly why this Arab Spring, this Marxist, this Islamist Arab Spring is needed in New York City. What has been long theorized needs to actually be experienced, because what we have seen in the Arab Spring, because remember, Trump got elected on the Arab Spring was something that Obama and his administration believed heavily in, and in fact provoked. Trump comes in afterwards, and he is cutting all kinds of favorable deals in the Middle East post-Arab Spring. A lot of people got a taste of the Arab Spring and thought, over in Abu Dhabi, the women are still wearing head coverings, but they can take their kids to an amusement park and go see a movie. You see what I'm saying? Maybe we don't have to actually go to, become little Ottomans here. Could the same thing happen in New York? Maybe they need to face the full brunt. They need to face that spring. Does that make sense? Look at the aftermath of the Arab Spring in the Middle East.
And everybody else in the states that they escaped to needs to see the full brunt of that and decide for themselves if they're really proud of being in America or not, or are always just going to be running off to comfort land. This is my point about why there should have been the death penalty for the Penn State football program, and there should have been a live camera every Saturday, the whole country just looking at an empty stadium. Rub their nose in it. You don't get to just walk away that casually from sin of this level, and this isn't a pocket level of corporate sin of what is going on. Everybody needs to have a good, hard look at it, because it's antithetical and cancerous to all of America.
All right, final thoughts. We got about a minute here.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the disastrous results of what the destabilization of areas does for immigration and the types of people that then try to flee those countries that are on fire. I'm talking about the same dynamic. That is, I mean, you can look at the Arab Spring after. Was Western Europe more livable before or after the Arab Spring? Less.
That's a good point too.
That's what I'm talking about.
Here's the reality of this conversation, because we can go in circles with each other back and forth on all of the consequences of this. This is you have to have a generational failure to put your culture in one generation in the positions that these Western cultures have put themselves in, with these kinds of dilemmas that we're trying to do the math, in real time.
The fact that we're doing this conversation with a straight face is a huge indictment.
Yes, I mean we are literally just doing the culture war versions of casualty assessments at this point. Okay, hey, does this particular weapon of mass destruction kill this many people? Does it kill that many? This is not a very enjoyable conversation. But it is evidence of a complete and total generational failure.
Who's supposed to lead each generation? The men.
The men. Which takes us full circle to where we started the hour. Have a great weekend. Men, if you earned it. Romans 8:28.